What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We are here with some more NFL DFS picks and lineup advice. The playoff edition, this time for Wild Card Weekend. Lineup strategies for FanDuel and DraftKings. The two-gamer on Saturday, the three-gamer on Sunday. All the classic lineup advice that you need. Welcome, I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, joined by Jack, creator of DFS Magic and the lineup builder at Occupy Fantasy. Jack, what's happening, dude?
Hey Brian, how's it going? Back for more of these. We our streak of no Josh Allen slates is going to stop at 2 on Sunday, but I think we found some good stuff for these two and ready to I think probably do a series of these with you, right, as the playoffs unfold.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know the people want it, so we'll continue doing these short slate videos as we have wildcard weekend, divisional round, and then conference championships. So what we're going to do in this video, it'll be two sections in the same video, but we'll start with Saturday's two-gamer, the 49ers versus Seahawks, Jaguars versus Chargers, and we'll talk about the two-game strategy for that slate. And then we'll transition to the Sunday three-gamer, and talk about strategy for that because it is slightly different, and there will be some overarching short slate strategies, but we'll mix in our picks and stacking thoughts, low owned players for each game. It'll be great. So before we get started, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Just tons and tons of content coming out over these next few days and weeks for different sports. So make sure you're subscribed to not miss a video. Give us a thumbs up. We appreciate it. It helps others find the video. Any questions you have about this slate, Discord is the best bet. OccupyFantasy.com/Discord to chat with us and other members of the community. But you can also comment on this YouTube video. I'll monitor it until the slates begin throughout the weekend. Let us know, and we'll happily answer those questions. So, Jack, two-gamer versus a three-gamer. Before we dive deep into that, any high level differences between two game and three game as we refresh our viewers' memories?
Yeah, I think we've been working on this pitch for a while now. I think we're starting to get to a pretty clear message. I think the difference, two gamers is almost think more like showdown mentality, right? Like think about pivots at ownership. Think about you know, things that correlate are even things like a pick six versus a quarterback. You're really not that concerned um, with the lineup construction of like number of players in each team and positions more so than just pure correlation ownership, right? Whereas three gamers, I think it's more like a classic slate where you're still trying to adhere to some of those principles, but you're making some exceptions. I don't know. What do you think? That's kind of my latest thought on it.
No, I think that's a great way to describe it and to differentiate between the two. And maybe you're stacking a little more heavily on the two gamers and be more willing to play all the guys. Whereas on three gamer on Sunday, as we'll get into, there may be some quarterbacks even that we might not want to play. So let's start with this two gamer. And initially, Jack, there were some weather concerns in Seattle and San Francisco. That forecast has brightened up a little bit. There still will be some rain, still will be some wind. But if you look at these two games from a stacking environment, much higher total in that Jacksonville game.
Yeah, absolutely. And this kind of interesting. It's almost kind of just like a use your brain kind of thing. I know Seattle's a huge underdog, right? And there are some weather concerns, but right off the bat, you have a almost zero owned Geno Smith who has put up big numbers this year, and he's throwing to Lockett and Metcalf, who are you could argue are the best two receivers on the slate, definitely in like the top four. You're getting that stack at super low ownership. So, weather risk aside, and failing as an underdog against tough defense aside, I think right off the bat, that's an interesting idea to me as kind of an easy play.
For sure. And we got to think here, right? Like we saw Baker Mayfield be optimal on that Christmas slate with much better quarterbacks. And all four of these quarterbacks on the Saturday slate are making their preseason debut or postseason debut, right? So nerves, jitters, whatever you want to call it, anything can happen. And these are all rematches as well, so we could see lower scoring as a result of that. So let's go game by game, Jack. Seattle, San Francisco. We'll start with there. Um, Injuries. Let's do injuries for the game. And for Seattle, really not much. San Francisco, not much, honestly, either in way of injuries. DJ Dallas is questionable. He's expected to suit up for Seattle. Beyond that, there's really nothing else. The Seattle wide receiver situation, wide receiver three situation with Marquise Goodwin on injured reserve, D. Eskridge on injured reserve. They've been playing Cade Johnson the last week. He's been called up again. He'll be the wide receiver three, but fortunately not much to deal with. The first question I asked you, Jack, when we were offline earlier was how much can we stack each team? Now, we know on FanDuel we can stack up to four guys per team, and we'll want to do that on this slate. DraftKings, you can stack up to six. And can we stack that many? How many should we be stacking in high risk contests?
Yeah, I think you can go more than four here. I think we were talking through each team. For Seattle, if you imagine you play a running back, maybe a cheap tight end, and two receivers, that's a very easy four. I think we've talked about this. We don't often, or I don't know if we've ever seen a lineup win with three wide receivers from the same team. But you could even get crazy for 150 lineups, throw DJ Dallas in there. They have a couple tight ends, but I think that sort of build of like running back, two receivers, tight end would work pretty well for Seattle. What do you think?
I agree. I totally agree. And as 10-point dogs, that's not something that we're typically looking to do, but they should be throwing most of the game once they have to abandon the run if the spread holds, or they're winning, or all the games are lower scoring. They're very, very a diverse range of outcomes for how this gets there. And I think you can. And I think the same goes for San Francisco's side, right? Maybe they have a little higher ceiling. Maybe you can go six guys with San Francisco as Purdy, play McCaffrey, the receivers, Kittle. And I think, Jack, even in a blowout scenario, San Francisco wins by multiple scores. Purdy does the early work with McCaffrey, and Eli Mitchell closes it up. And I think you could easily play a quarterback and two running backs from San Francisco in the same lineup.
Yeah, that's actually a rule we've talked about in the past, where you might set a max two of a quarterback and the two running backs on a team. But I agree, this is a situation where it seems fine. I mean, Purdy's cheap. Elijah Mitchell is super cheap. He's like half the price of McCaffrey. So, yeah, in that kind of game script, they run the ball a ton. Yeah, totally agree. That would be a super unique stack immediately, right? You could just play a bunch of chalk in that lineup and probably be unique because no one's going to do that.
Exactly. What about low-owned guys from this game? I'll bring up the lineup builder really quickly, and I'm looking specifically here on DraftKings, and we pick Seattle and San Francisco in the team filter. Sorting by ownership, the players we have that are sub 20% projected ownership, both Seattle tight ends, Seattle defense, Geno Smith, Elijah Mitchell, Jawan Jennings, DJ Dallas, and then all the scrubs. Anyone in particular stand out to you as one you're like, I really like this guy or this team or this position to get different in this stack?
Yeah, I think we talked about it. Not really. I mean, these guys are kind of gross. But I mean, honestly, the fact that Geno Smith is sub 10, right? That's unique already. And like we just said, this is a huge underdog game. People are not going to stack this game. So, if you do choose to play some of those trashier players, I would lean toward putting them in stacks as opposed to just throwing them in as a one-off. Anyone catch your eye on either side here?
The way they use tight ends are interesting. So Fant and or Parkinson, and even a Geno double tight end lineup, I think is certainly a possibility given the way this tight end system works. And I think K Johnson's going to be 1%. We talked about him, the wide receiver three. Any guy that's going to be on the field for 20 plus routes and is 1% owned, you have to consider in large field high risk contests on these short slates.
Yeah, and you mentioned the double tight end, right? That's sort of almost like a showdownism, right? I mean, you would never dream of playing two tight ends at the same quarterback in a traditional classic slate, but two gamer, you think more showdown, multiple tight ends can win, and it's unique. So yeah.
And I think the other double tight end pairing you could do is on that Charger side. In the second game, you play Everett and Parham, and those guys could easily get there. You're looking for these guys that run a decent amount of routes, and Parham and Parkinson and Fant and Everett all qualify. So anything else from this game, Jack, before we move on?
Yeah, I don't think so. It was good.
Okay, so going over to the Chargers and Jacksonville, the game that most people are excited about on the Saturday slate. Pretty tight spread here, higher total. And given the weapons on both sides, I think Mike Williams is out, so that means we have Keenan Allen as the number one, obviously Joshua Palmer, elevated role, DeAndre Carter, the wide receiver three, and super cheap. So given the weapons on both sides here, I think this is the ultimate game to stack, and I think I wouldn't be shocked if there was a game on this slate that is a 5-2 or 5-3 stack that wins it all, it would be this game. And I think, as we talked about earlier, you can stack every which way on both sides.
Yeah, 5-man, even 6-man, multiple run backs. Totally agree. You'll notice obviously the field is smart here. There's a lot of pretty highly owned players in this game, so that brings in that importance of overstacking, right? We know the field doesn't do it enough. It's a way to get unique. You can play, 3x1s, but you're going to be, in a lot of competition with people, whether it's dupes or just really finding that perfect lineup. If you play a 5x2 and that game goes, 49-42, You don't need the perfect lineup to win, and you had a very recent example of that with your big takedown a few weeks ago, right? You did not have the optimal like 25-point defense, but it didn't matter because people didn't have your construction.
Exactly, and that's the key here. That really is the key. And you mentioned the wide receivers. The pricing is just horrific on DraftKings. Zay Jones 4,300, Kirk 5,900, and Palmer now with Williams off 5,300. So lots of cheap salaries, and that leads me to this question: can we leave salary on the table in this slate? And I think we really can.
Yeah, yeah, I think you can. I mean, I didn't even think about it, but I remember last week we said it was kind of tough to do. Yeah, I mean, these receivers anywhere from 7K to 4K could all directly outscore each other, right?
Right.
Yeah. So this is a rare one where how much would you leave? I guess is the question. Um,
I mean, if you look at quarterbacks, Herbert's 66 and Purdy's 55, so that's a 1K difference. You look at the receivers, like you said, if Allen, let's just say they focus their defensive game plan on Allen and he gets shut out. I mean, Kirk is another 1K cheaper. Like, there are ways that you can leave 2K on the table here. I would probably allow up to 2K, but to be very mindful of which players I'm using in a lineup that leaves 2K over.
yeah. So like, can Debo Samuel outscore Keenan Allen? Absolutely. Can Zay Jones outscore him? Absolutely.
We've seen
Can
it.
Jawan Jennings outscore him? Probably not. So
Right.
that's a good way to think about it. Is look at your lineups that have salary and try to kind of you don't have to do it with all of them, but with a handful, kind of try to make a hand swap and see who you can upgrade to. And if it's like a very obvious, like, okay, yeah, this guy's definitely going to outscore this other guy, 99% of the time, that's when you want to swap. But if you can't decide, it's probably okay. And again, it feels kind of gross on these slates, right? But it should on these two gamers.
Yep, and with a decent amount of time, assuming the first game doesn't go into overtime between the games, definitely a perfect opportunity to late swap. So make sure you're monitoring that. Jack, the sub 20% players in this game, we have Jaguars defense just barely qualifies. DeAndre Carter, he and I think initially I thought, wow, he should be popular, but everyone else is so cheap that you don't really need to play DeAndre Carter, which is why his ownership is kind of suppressed. Marvin Jones, Kelly, Hasty, Parham. This game has much more attractive lower owned options than that first game.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think the defense is a good point. I think we're just going to see tons of defense from the other game, and it's probably not a position that's higher variability in defense, right? It's basically just random. So these two teams do throw the ball quite a bit, and that leads to sacks and turnovers. Someone could easily hit a pick six here. And like we said, right? There's no reason why you can't play these defenses with the quarterbacks or even against them, right?
Exactly. And honestly, it might even be the preferred approach in a game where teams are throwing a ton, like as expected in this game. So, all right, that'll do it for this slate, the two gamer. We'll get to the three gamer here in a second. Jack, I think to summarize, stack as much as you can on the two gamer and look to play 1 to 2 of these lower owned players. Don't be afraid to play double tight end on this slate in high risk. Be around to late swap. Anything I missed on this slate?
Yeah, just you can leave salary in this one. We kind of ballparked up to 2K for large field, right? For small field, you probably don't need to mess around with that too much. But to get unique, it's that sub 20% player overstacking. So at least three teammates and one bring back, and then the up to 2K salary are the options.
Cool. All right, let's move on to the Sunday slate. Before we do, if you like what you see, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We appreciate it. Lets you know when these new videos are uploaded. OccupyFantasy.com has projected ownership for every single slate this weekend. Jack and I worked on it earlier today. So the Saturday only slate, the Sunday only slate, all of the showdowns have projected ownership in our model and in our builder. So everything you need, the daily plug will post later tonight. It's a full comprehensive guide to wildcard weekend with classic slate rankings, strategies, as well as showdown. So make sure you go check that out after you watch this video later tonight. All right, Jack, three gamer on Sunday. Let me move over here to the next tab. Miami and Buffalo, Giants, Minnesota, Baltimore, Cincinnati. Let's start with the injuries across the board. At quarterback, Lamar is out. Tua is out. Teddy's probably not going to play. Huntley is going to play. That gives us multiple backup quarterbacks in wildcard weekend, which is not great to watch.
No, unfortunately, this is the downside of these extra teams, right? We get these horrible games. A couple of these would, I mean, if Tua and Lamar were playing, we would have gotten better football. It is what it is. The best quarterback matchup on the slate is Daniel Jones versus Kirk. So yeah, that's what we're dealing with.
And that game went off the first time they met in the regular season. I swept everything in small field by stacking that game in the regular season. As we'll get game by game here, but let's talk about should we play Skylar Thompson? Should we play Tyler Huntley?
Yeah, we talked about this, and I think you all know that Brian rarely says no to playing quarterbacks. I think where we're going with this is just no, right?
Yeah.
And
I,
and why is that? Salary, upside. I mean, what do you see?
well, we talked about the Christmas slate, right? And it's like, okay, we'll stack up that first game, Aaron Rodgers and Tua. That game kind of busted, and Baker Mayfield ended up being optimal at 17 points. And we said we shouldn't play Mayfield, and obviously that caused some concern in our fading strategy. But the difference between that slate and this slate is we have two premier quarterbacks, one of the running variety in Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. Remember that Christmas slate? Nobody on that slate could run, right? We didn't have a Josh Allen, Tua. And Aaron Rodgers do not run. So there weren't going to be any extra upside added with their legs. Here we have Allen and Burrow, and then we have Cousins and Jones, who are the same price as basically as Huntley and Skylar Thompson, which means Josh Allen has to have a subpar game, Burrow has to have a subpar game, and these two guys have to outscore, or one of them have to outscore Cousins and Jones. So I think there's a lot more hurdles this time around than there was on Christmas.
Yeah, totally agree with having that extra game where you don't need, two games to bust was the key there. But yeah, I agree. I think it's just kind of insurmountable to think that all those guys fails. And hey, if it does, congrats to the 3% of the field who plays Skylar Thompson in a 2-by-0 stack. But I don't think we're going there. I think you mentioned it based on the quality of quarterback play here and the game environment with Minnesota and the Giants. We have some great stacking options. So which game do you want to handle first, or do you want to do? Did you do injuries for this one already? I forget.
Let's continue with the injuries really quickly before we go game by game. And so going to running back, Raheem Mostert has been ruled out, which means we get Jeff Wilson as the lead back. But also, and again, it's 10-point dog, so it's tough to say. But Jack, for looking for a super low end running back, the running back two, Ahmed is going to be the guy there. So, but yeah, again, it's tough to really get too excited about a 10-point dog.
Yep, and we have seen the backup running backs play. A three gamer, it's probably a little thinner, right, than a two gamer. Someone to keep in mind. Any other? And we talked about the quarterback injuries.
So going to
That's
receiver,
about it then, huh?
yeah, receiver. I think the big one on the slate, honestly, because we're considering stacking that game so heavily, is Isaiah McKenzie. Hurt his hamstring in practice on Wednesday. Did not practice yesterday or today. He said he's going to try to gut it out. We'll see. But that practice participation pattern generally doesn't bode well for players suiting up on Sunday. If he's out, they elevated Cole Beasley, but also Khalil Shakir has been dynamic when he's gotten the opportunity to get on the field. So I'm curious to see how that shakes out. We'll have to wait till Sunday, I think, to see how see if he's going to go. But that certainly impacts ownership and Buffalo stacks.
And is that a situation where you say, you know, both Beasley and Shakir are going to be like 2% owned, so you don't really know which one's going to go off, so you just play both, and would you use like a max one rule if you were doing that?
I would for sure, and I think Beasley's washed and Shakir's more dynamic. But again, it's a three gamer, shit happens. So I think you have to play both if Isaiah's out.
You get the Randall Cobb 3 catches, 18 yards, 2 touchdowns,
Exactly,
but
it's
at least he won't be
very possible.
35% owned this time,
Yeah.
like he was in that showdown slate. Ugh.
Dude, I still have nightmares about that shit. So, what if McKenzie's in? Do we still play those guys? I think we have to because he could be limited or re-injure his hamstring.
Yeah, so if you're talking about how to build, I'm just looking at prices. I mean, McKenzie 34, other guys are 3K for sure, and that game is
The first
that's
game.
the first game, so you have time. Yeah, so yeah, you just be around for the game day and actors release, and be ready to do some swaps. But yeah, I think you just the safe way to do it would be build McKenzie in and maybe hand swap a few if he stays in and you want to use the other guys. Or you could build with all of them in. You just have to remember, since McKenzie costs more, you'll have to actually go in and maybe do some edits to get rid of those cheaper guys.
For sure. All right, let's stick with this game then and talk about stacking. We've agreed that we're probably not going to play Skylar Thompson in any contest type. If we play Buffalo, we can. I think we could probably stack up to 5-6 is probably too much on a three gamer. We have seen it win before. I guess if there is a team that could do it, it's Buffalo. Um, I guess the real question I have is how many bringbacks is too many or not enough for Miami in a large field contest?
Yeah, so I mean, we know the field's going to play a bunch of like 3-by-0, maybe 4-by-0, right, with the defense. So can that win? Absolutely. Does it win as often as it's used? I don't know. I would suspect, though, that a bringback wins more often than it's used. So I would say min one bringback, probably max two. I wouldn't rule out the second one. I don't know. What do you think?
I would definitely allow up to two, right? I mean, we just need Skylar Thompson to facilitate some, right? Because both Waddle and Hill can get 10 catches for 80 yards and be optimal. Jeff Wilson, if he gets a full workload and they focus on running the ball, I can see it. I think you can definitely allow up to two.
And there's some real cheap guys. I mean, Sherfield is min price, Gesicki's min price. Wilson is super cheap, like you said, and you know this Buffalo defense is good, right? But ever since they lost Von Miller, they're not just unstoppable like they were in the first half of the season. So they can be beat, and like you said, Tyreek Hill can catch. You know, what is that one play he like picked up a fumble and just ran it for 75 yards? So I think you always want to play guys like that, especially in a game where you want the other quarterback to ceiling. So and again, it's unique, right? People are not going to play. I mean, Tyreek Hill 25%. Well, I'm looking at DraftKings. Waddle 11% on a three-gamer. That's kind of crazy for the upside that we know those guys have.
Absolutely. I would be looking to get over the field on those guys, especially within stacks. Buffalo running back situation. Singletary Cook's been a kind of a 60-40 split with Singletary and Cook. Like San Francisco, can you play both of those guys with Allen? Or because the three-gamer and Josh Allen's price, we might want to limit playing all three of those guys together.
That is an interesting one. It does seem tougher. They are cheap. They do split. I think they both catch passes. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I could see it. Yeah. I mean, it's not as much of a slam dunk as the two-game Brock Purdy one because of the price and the 3 games. I don't. What do you think?
Yeah, it's really tough because of the extra game and Allen's price. So I don't know, man. I think I will allow it and just be very careful and just after I build my lineups, just search for lineups that have those three guys and see what they look like.
Yeah. And you know, is Al? We've talked about limiting to 2 receivers. Is there ever going to be is there ever going to be a case like even like Allen, or would you play Diggs, Davis, and you know a 3K Shakir Beasley or not?
I would. I think you have to consider it. Knox doesn't have a huge target share, and Allen can spread it around. And given the other games on the slate, it's possible with the prices. It likely means you're playing only. I mean, it does mean you're only playing one of Tyreek, Waddle, Chase, Higgins, Jefferson, Thielen. So if we look at it that way, it sounds kind of thin. But if this game goes off and the other two don't, then it's possible.
Yeah, you need some expensive running back funnels from the other games, which you know Mixon, Cook, Barkley.
Yeah,
That's possible. So yeah, it's a little thin, but probably wouldn't rule it out. Allen, you just and again, when you play a guy like Josh Allen, who's going to be whatever. I guess we only have 30% because of the price, but he'll be chalk, right? You got to you got to think a little bit different and open up the constructions to get unique with him.
for sure. All right. Let's move on to the second game, and that is the afternoon game is the Giants and the Vikings, which should be the most competitive on the slate. And really no injuries here. Both teams are pretty healthy, which is nice to see. And Jack, I think we can 5-man stack both these teams on DraftKings. We can certainly 4-man stack them on FanDuel, and probably the best game to have multiple runbacks in.
Yeah, just let this one rip. I mean, I don't think anyone could fault you if you decided you just wanted to play 100% game stacks in this game. I mean, it's just a no-brainer. Vegas, right? It's the 50-point total, small spread in a dome. They played already and they couldn't stop each other. You got tons of weapons. You know, it's a dream, and you know it probably fail and we'll tilt, but you know, I think this is one you just go for. You kind of let it ride.
I know you've talked yourself into playing all 4 quarterbacks on the Saturday slate, but given your answer right there, it sounds like you might go 100% on this game.
The only thing holding me back is Allen is not 50% owned. I think we
Yeah,
mentioned this. The FanDuel pricing recently has been pretty sharp.
it has.
So I think, you know, if Allen was 50% owned and these quarterbacks were like, you know, 15, 10 or something, I might consider that. But I think, you know, the fact that, I mean, Joe Burrow even we have projected lower ownership than Cousins and Jones. So I think I'll play all 4, but I will not be under the field on this game. Let's put it that way.
Very safe to say. Okay. If we look at lower owned guys from this game, which I don't know if we need to do, just because if we overstack it, we'll be one of the few to really, 4-2, 4-1, 3-2 type stacks, 5-5-2 even. If you look at sub 20% guys here, we have the tight end for the Giants, Bellinger. KJ Osborne, who I guess is just primed to do it again, 5% owned on this slate. really after that is not much else. So I think if you stack this game, you'll have to probably find outside of Osborne, find your lower owned piece somewhere else.
Yep. And point out the defenses, particularly. I think we Giants 17, Minnesota 8. I wouldn't be surprised if those are closer to 10. But again, we've seen Kirk Cousins throw pick six and then throw for 400 yards, right? So even in a three gamer, I think with a high passing environment like that, you don't want to rule out playing a defense against quarterback. A little bit thinner on a three gamer, but I certainly would not rule it out.
I mean, it was literally optimal the last time Minnesota was on a 3 game slate, the Indianapolis game, right? So he threw a
Yep.
pick six
Yep.
early or
And
multiple
again,
touchdowns. So
instant unique, right? Even though Giants defense is 17% owned, if you put him in a stack against Cousins, it's going to be unique because people aren't going to do that.
for sure. Any other thoughts from this game?
I think we're good. I think that leaves us with another third string quarter. I guess it's a backup quarterback, but
Only a
on the final
backup this
one.
time. So Tyler Huntley versus Joe Burrow. We agree we're probably not playing Baltimore stacks. Cincinnati stacks, we could play up to 5 guys probably on DraftKings. How many is too many given them? Same question as Miami, but less dynamic offensive skill players. I guess you could run it back with Andrews and Dobbins, maybe Demarcus Robinson and one of those guys. But, playing multiple Ravens is super thin on this slate, I think.
Yeah, I just would, even if whether or not you're stacking this game, you just look at, Demarcus Robinson is the wide receiver one, right? And he's like 6% owned. He's $3,500. I mean, that's just a no-brainer play to. I would say. I mean, tell me if you disagree, but that's probably someone you want to get at least a little bit over the field on. Just, they're going to be trailing. They're going to have to throw. Whether you game stack him, bring him back, or just throw him in as a kind of a trash player.
Have to.
Tyler Boyd, 8%. Another way to get unique. Yeah, I guess with the bringbacks, I mean, Ravens defense. I mean, they've actually played pretty well the last half of the season, and Burrow throws a lot, so he's not as maybe prone to the pick six as Kirk Cousins, but certainly you could see a game where Ravens defense makes a big play, and then Burrow wakes up in ceilings, and that would be another way to get unique playing Burrow. But again,
And
Burrow's like 15% owned.
that's the thing, right? If he was like higher owned, I would be considering fading a little bit or going under because they are missing 2 offensive linemen, Lyle Collins and then their guard, Alex Kappa. But like you said, 15% owned. You're not gaining much by not playing one of the highest ceiling quarterbacks on the slate. So
We have this whenever. I think you brought this up in other Josh Allen sites, so we'll ask you this time. Would you have any appetite to say game stack one of the later two games, probably the middle one, but play Josh Allen as like a one off, or play one of these like super cheap backups as a one off? Any appetite for those kind of crazy constructions on this slate, or do you just play it straight up?
I don't think you have to because of the pricing and the teams that are playing. If we had two powerhouses, like if it was like Buffalo and Kansas City, or if it was Cincinnati and Buffalo, and we might see this next week, maybe we'll do that. I just don't think, given the matchups that and the pricing, we don't have to do that. I think.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
All right. Okay, I think we hit everything here. The lower owned options in this game are extremely attractive in Boyd and Robinson, as in the first game. So, final thoughts. I think it's similar to the two gamer, but you could probably fade a couple of the quarterbacks. You can still 5, even maybe 6-man stack on DraftKings. We've seen it win before. Definitely 4-man stack these teams. Jack, final thoughts here on these two games. Let's start with the Saturday slate. I want to get your opinion on this. What is your favorite play, angle, strategy, construction for the Saturday slate?
I think I'm coming full circle here, and the guy who never plays the crappy quarterbacks, I gotta say Geno Smith and DK and Lockett just not owned. I mean, I just think is it the most likely stack to win? No, but is it more likely to win than what percent of the field is going to have a 4x1 Seattle, like 2%, 1%? It's definitely more likely than that, just purely because of the talent at the receiver position, the way he funnels to them. And San Francisco's a pass funnel, so that they'll probably be losing. So I think that's my favorite. And I would rarely say that about like a crappy quarterback in one of these slates. But what do you got for Saturday?
That's a really good angle. I think you have to play that. I agree with you. The other angle is I like two tight ends on this slate. If you stack Geno, playing them with Fant and Parkinson. If you play Herbert, stacking them with Everett and Parham. Really interesting way to get unique. Both options are super cheap, so you could pay up elsewhere. I think that's my angle for Saturday. So, all right, Sunday slate, 3 gamer. What is your favorite move here?
I think you just got to go for that middle game. This one's kind of a just a traditional like don't overthink it. You've got the right environment, you've got the right prices and ownerships. It's not so nothing sexy or super sneaky, but I think it's just a prime spot for a game stack to go off in a short environment.
It absolutely is. And I think my favorite angle from this slate is whoever that Buffalo wide receiver three ends up being. Probably Shakir if McKenzie's out. And honestly, playing Shakir even if McKenzie's in. So I think that's my favorite area to look in for this three-game slate. So, Jack, this has been a great video. We still have a couple more left here over the next coming weeks. But any final thoughts, anything we missed?
If you had to pick a showdown slate for anyone who's interested in playing showdown, any of these games stick out to you as particularly good or bad?
The biggest prizes are in the nighttime
There
game.
you go. Yeah,
So I'm a
there's
little
our Brian. Huh? Go-
so I'm
Probably
certainly
Saturday night. I don't
more
know.
interesting. Yeah, but I think that Saturday night one. Um, the big spread games in both Cincinnati and Buffalo are super interesting. As is the San Francisco game, just because the field is likely going to play onslaughts from the favorites, and I think we can get a little different by playing multiple guys from the underdogs. I think just eyeballing it, that's probably what I would look at.
Yeah, and this brings up a good point for folks. If you have time, if you build for your classic slate and you're really heavy on like say that Giants game or something, or you're really heavy on a particular quarterback, you could even use one of these showdown slates to kind of hedge your bets a little bit, right?
Totally, totally. That's a great way of doing it. A lot of people don't talk about that. We talk about maybe hedging with sports bets or props, but hedging on these other derivative slates is certainly a way you can do that. So that's a good call.
So like if I was way under on Christian McCaffrey on the classic slate, I could go play that showdown slate and just jam 100% McCaffrey like captain in a contest, and that way, if he goes crazy, I'm not totally dead. I'm not going to take a zero on the day.
I kind of do that too in my if I play 150 max in small field and I take a big stand on a guy in 150 max, maybe I'll play him a little heavier in small field and maybe try to hit the middle or just hedge my bets a little bit.
Yeah, we don't get into that much on these short slates. We just go all in on our best strategies, but we probably should talk about hedging from time to time.
Yeah, for sure. And again, Sunday, three different game times, so want to be around in between each one. In between first and second, is a little difficult to swap, but definitely before that final game. So that'll do it for this video. We appreciate you watching all the way to the end. As always, if you've liked what you've seen so far, and unless you've just left this on and left the room, I'm pretty sure you like what you saw if you got this far in the video. So make sure you subscribe. Get notified when we go live, upload these videos throughout the playoffs. Give us a thumbs up. We appreciate it. Lets us know to continue to make these videos. Helps others on YouTube find the videos. Any questions, comment on the video below. We'll get back to you before the games lock on Saturday or Sunday. Join our Discord server to chat with us and other members of the community. All these links are in the description below. Daily plug, post it Friday evening. Full recap rundown of the entire weekend, how to approach it from a DFS perspective. Models are up and running, ownership for every single slate, projected ownership, as well as our projections, lineup builder, everything you need. OccupyFantasy.com. So for Jack at DFS Magic _Magic, I'm at Brian Jester FF. Thank you for listening and good luck on Wildcard Weekend.